this topic which has been selected, or this theme which has been selected, is very, very close to my heart. It's so close to my heart that I really did not need to prepare for it, because this is something that I totally believe in, and something that I believe is, if not the only reason for my success, but most definitely has played a great role in what I have been able to achieve over the last many years. But before I start, let me also sort of try to bring about some relationship that I have with you, with this particular group. A mention was made that you guys have come in from industry and you are doing this 1-year program. I too did a short program. So my association with business school is with IIM Ahmedabad, which some of you may have heard of. The program that I did there many years ago was called MEP, Management Education Program. And as a matter of fact, your previous director, Shekhar Chaudhary, was our program coordinator at that point of time. That's the time that I got to meet him and knew him pretty well for those 6 months that I was there at IIM Ahmedabad. So I did not actually sit for my CAT exams and not get in and then do my MEP as has been suggested. I was, going back to my college days, I was doing my honors in history, I was doing my masters in history, and I dropped out after my first year in history. The idea being to sit for competitive exams. I was interested in the IPS, I was interested in the Forest Service. That was where my interest lay when I was in my late teens, early 20s. But then changes happened. And one change that happened was that I fell in love with a girl. And when I fell in love with this girl, I would go across to her house and she had this old maid, this big fat maid, and this maid would say, "Chokri hai, magar nokri nahi hai." So that sort of righted for some time, and I understood that I need to get a job very quickly. And that's the time that the opportunity came up with Tata Steel, and I went across and managed to get interviewed. And Rusi Modi was then the chairman, managing director of Tata Steel. And he was also a great guy in terms of trying to understand what is the passion, what is the attitude of the people, rather than what is the talent that they actually bring to and then do my MEP as has been suggested. I was, going back to my college days, I was doing my honors in history, I was doing my masters in history, and I dropped out after my first year in history. The idea being to sit for competitive exams. I was interested in the IPS, I was interested in the Forest Service. That was where my interest lay when I was in my late teens, early 20s. But then changes happened. And one change that happened was that I fell in love with a girl. And when I fell in love with this girl, I would go across to her house and she had this old maid, this big fat maid, and this maid would say, "Chokri hai, magar nokri nahi hai." So that sort of righted for some time, and I understood that I need to get a job very quickly. And that's the time that the opportunity came up with Tata Steel, and I went across and managed to get interviewed. And Rusi Modi was then the chairman, managing director of Tata Steel. And he was also a great guy in terms of trying to understand what is the passion, what is the attitude of the people, rather than what is the talent that they actually bring to a company. And I think on the basis of that, I was selected. So I was really a dropout from my master's in college when I took up this job in Tata Steel, which was interesting in terms of the fact that everybody who joined a company such like Tata Steel was either a metallurgical engineer or an engineer to start with, and most definitely had some kind of an MBA program to back him up. And here there was somebody like me with a liberal arts sort of degree, bachelor's degree, joining this organization. So obviously from the first day onwards, there was a challenge in terms of how do I keep up with the rest of the guys. And I think that has driven me considerably, at least from the starting itself, in terms of the fact that I have my back to the wall and how do I actually compete with the rest of the guys. And I think I've been able to do a rather good job. And that, I believe, once again, was because of the fact that I had a positive attitude and a desire to excel. And this is something which has stood me in good stead from those late 70s that I joined Tata Steel. How many of you play cricket? Okay, so how many of you have heard of a guy called Harsha Bhogle? Also quite a few. Have any of you heard of IIM Ahmedabad? So, there's a small clip, I don't know how many of you have seen it, but it's really, really very powerful. This Harsha Bhogle is talking at IIM Ahmedabad, and he talks about something called Kashi, he talks about something. So maybe if you can play that, is that?
Talent and say, "Wow, I wish I could be like that." And yet you find that excellence is not about talent alone. In fact, a major part of excellence has nothing to do with talent. And in course of time, once you go beyond a certain level, ability or talent is the most useless virtue to possess. It's what you do with that talent that matters. And that's what he used the word, Bukero used the word that I love, attitude. Beyond the point, it is attitude that counts for far, 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 far more than talent. Because talent breeds an ego. And talent never solves problems beyond a point. And I was fascinated by something that Sandy Gordon said when we were doing a program together. Because I had seen a lot of young cricketers, extremely talented, who the moment they faced a roadblock did not know what to do. Because they had never had to struggle to succeed. They always used their talent to succeed. And Vinod Kambli is an example of that. The moment Courtney Walsh bounced him in Bombay, he was 22 years old. Was he? Yeah, he was 22 years old then. In 1994, he was 20 years old. Didn't know what to do, did not play a test match after that. His last test match when he was 22 years old. Just did not know how to play the bouncing ball because talent had solved everything for him before. In the Australian Army, when they are, and this is something that doesn't come from sport, but it's something a sports scientist told me, that when they're building an elite core team, they look at your career record, your track record, and if you've never failed, they don't pick you. They don't pick you because they say, if this man experiences failure, will he know what to do? They pick people who failed and bounced back. And that is where your attitude comes through. And I mean, let's look at excellence. What is excellence about? It's about being the top 10% in your profession. I mean, I know I'm talking to people who want to be the top 1%, but a lot of ordinary people around us around. So let's say top 10%. Can talent take, is talent important when you get to be the top 10%? I mean, everybody in the top 10% will have the same talent, right? So what's your USP? It's what you do with the talent that counts. And unfortunately in our sport, and I think in India as a nation, we have been dazzled by talent a great deal. I found that beyond a certain time, in sport, as indeed in broadcasting, that your work ethic and your attitude counts for far, far more than talent. I mean, Tendulkar is a prime example. The moment you say Tendulkar, if I asked you to, if you had one of those things that talk show hosts do, I'll give you a word and you give me a connecting word in one word. You say Tendulkar, you say talent. Right? He played 55 games as a 14-year-old without a break. 55 days. He practiced for 2 hours, play a game, practice 2 hours, fall asleep on the dining table. And do that 55 days in a row. That's attitude. You know, we think, and this is something we talk about in our corporate lectures as well, where we advise against talent. When Tendulkar was born, it wasn't that this nurse picked him up and said, here Mrs. Tendulkar, here's 70 hundreds for you. Yeah. It isn't Tendulkar's talent that's produced 70 hundreds. It's his work ethic, it's his attitude, and more than anything else, when he reaches the top, it's his passion to perform. And that counts for far more. The attitude and the passion counts for far, 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 far more.
Excellent. So I hope you enjoyed that. And so work ethic, passion is something that, you know, you guys need to have if you want to be in that top 1% or top 2% of what you plan to do. And talent will only get you so far and no further than that. So I thought, I came across this, you know, YouTube, and I thought it was excellent. It was something to share with you. It's something which reinforces what I believe that I have been doing, and in a smaller way than, you know, maybe Sachin Tendulkar and the others examples that he's given. But it's extremely true, and I would urge you to see this again whenever you have the time and see what you can take from it. Coming back to, you know, where I started off from before Harsha Bhogle. So I joined Tata Steel, and as I said, was so to say at a disadvantage vis-a-vis my colleagues who were in that organization, because here was a technical company and I was a non-technical without a management background. But then that was the time that I decided to get going and say that, you know, what can be done and what should be done, and took up every challenge as they came. So I would be the first guy putting up his hand, volunteering for any opportunity that came up, and even without an opportunity would be up there in front, demanding to do things which were totally outside my capability, so to say, which was outside my area of knowledge. So every time there was an opportunity which came up, I grabbed it. I still remember one. I was posted in Delhi and with Lattice, And the branch manager in Cochin had resigned in those days. There was this great outflow of people going to the Gulf area. So this guy decided to go off to the Gulf area and overnight kind of a thing. So I was told that, look, we want to send you to Cochin. So I said, for how long? Very much like, how high should I jump? So they said maybe about a week, maximum 10 days. I said, okay. So I packed accordingly and I went. I stayed there for 9 months. It was something which was of a learning experience. Of course, they were kind enough to allow me to go back after a month to pick up some more clothes. But other than that, the opportunity to do something which was not expected. People were quite horrified. My seniors were quite horrified that I never ever said after that, look, you said I was supposed to go for 10 days, why am I here for 9 months or for some period of time? And of course, later I learned that I was not the first person that they asked. They had asked other people to refuse, and I was the only guy who sort of agreed to do this. But that is something which has stood me in really good stead, which is in terms of the fact that whenever a challenge came up or whenever anybody gave me a challenge, rather than saying am I prepared for it, is to actually take it forward and do something about it. Which brings me to the second challenge, and I was posted to a place called Pune. And Pune, as far as steel consumption is concerned, is one of the highly evolved sort of steel consumption centers where things like forging quality steel, special steels, specialty tubes, because it's a great automotive hub. And I again, because I'm not an engineer, not a metallurgist, especially my knowledge on steel making and steel application was zero. But that did not stop me from saying I will do it. And I did pretty well there, so they kept me longer than I should have been. And which was once again, a great learning experience. And the point that Harsha made, which was in terms of the fact that unless you push yourself, unless you actually fail, you're not really going to achieve very much for two reasons. One, of course, is the fact that every time that you fail and you fall down, it's important that you pick up something. You pick up something from that when you fall down. Maybe a few pebbles, maybe a few grains of sand, which will be with you in terms of learning, which is one. And the second, of course, the point that he made, that unless you fail, you really don't know how to deal with failure. And that is extremely powerful. So there have been many, many failures in my lifetime in Tata Steel, but I believe that I have been able to bounce back very fast from there and have learned from whatever went wrong at that point of time. So much so that they made me the youngest chief sales manager of Tata Steel. So that when they did a re-engineering exercise, which was in the 97, 98, I was selected to lead the re-engineering exercise with PwC and with IBM Global Services, where we re-engineered the entire marketing and sales order generation and fulfillment processes, and which went into an SAP implementation, of which I was made the project manager. I had no background of IT or ICT or anything to do with that, but I was found to be the right person to be a project manager for an IT initiative. And of course, after that, the next story which happened was the internet. And I'm talking about late 90s, early 2000, when this idea came about, which was e-commerce, and we can sell steel online. And I was approached at that point in time by some youngsters who wanted me to join this startup. So I'm talking about late 99, early 2000, a small startup as the CEO, which was funded by the Reliance Group. So I resigned from Tata Steel. And these guys were horrified, here you've got a great story going as far as Tata Steel is concerned. You are knocking on the doors of, really big top management. You've got great credibility, you've been in this organization for the last 20 years. Why are you throwing it up to join a startup company, which may or may not succeed, it can cut, either way. To which I said that, look, I believe that this is the future, and I have done whatever I could do as far as the responsibilities that you gave me, and I want to do something more. So while I've done re-engineering and redesign on one side, I want to do a creative story on the next, because I think that's the next logical step. So the creative part was the startup, to which I was then convinced by Dr. Irani, who was the managing director, that why don't you do this here rather than going out and doing it with Reliance. In those days, and I guess even today, the Tatas and the Reliance don't really see eye to eye. So he was reluctant to let me go, and he then said, why don't you start this venture, whatever your idea is. He had no idea what I was talking about. But again, it was his belief in me as an individual, based obviously on my past in Tata Steel, which led him to make the investment or make the investment that Tata Steel did in the company that we then set up. And as soon as we set this up, 5 months later there was a dot-com bust. Right, so we're talking about mid-2000. Dot-com bust, everybody ran away. This idea was thrown out the window, as like, the baby with the bathwater kind of a story. And some of us, a lot of my colleagues who had joined me from Kalyani Steel, from Steel Authority, who were the joint venture partners, went back. As a matter of fact, Kalyani Steel itself, who was supposed to be a co-promoter, decided to exit from this company. And a number of my colleagues who had come from Tata Steel decided to go back. And Tata Steel executives themselves, the senior executives were telling me, look, I think it's time you came back, shut down the story. And we said, no, we will soldier on here because we believe in this. We believe in this is just because the others have failed, it doesn't mean that we will fail. And I still remember there's a place called Dimna where Tata Steel has their sort of management center such like this. And I was making a presentation and senior executives were asking me, look, where has this succeeded here? And I said, it's not succeeded anywhere. As a matter of fact, it's failed everywhere. So they said, then why should we support you? I said, you support us because I think it's a great idea. And any question that you have as far as the idea is concerned, I can answer. But if you ask me where has it succeeded, I will not be able to answer that because it has not. So we were challenged in terms of this, a few of us, and we decided, as I said, to soldier on. And one of the first things we did, I understand the PwC alumni is not here, so I can go to say this. PwC had written this beautiful business plan, and the first thing we did is that we threw that out. And we rewrote it ourselves. But let me also say that PwC business plan is now coming true today. So it was maybe a little, well, not a little, much ahead of its time. So I'm talking about early 2000, but that story is coming around today, which is 2014, 2015. But it's just that it was too much ahead of its time. But we threw that out and we rewrote our business plan, which was far more transactional in nature, which was not eyeballs and footfalls and things like that. Which is not that you create this wonderful sort of stadium, this virtual sort of marketplace and the whole world will come there. But you actually go in and you find out what are the problems that buyers and sellers are facing. Of course, we started off with steel because that's what we do. What are the problems that they're facing and how do I actually solve the problem? So each one, and this was, I guess, the little bit I learned in my re-engineering exercise, which was in terms of how to do this, which is what we did as far as redesigning and building this steel marketplace, which today, as mentioned, is the world's largest electronic steel marketplace. And also world's largest, also because the fact that everybody else has failed, and we were able to sort of get something right. We didn't stop there. So while the mandate of the company and the company itself was called Metal Junction, we then bought into other junctions, so to say, or other marketplaces. And something that we've done and which we are very, very proud of is Coal Junction. And so this is also very interesting. I was taking a flight from Delhi to Calcutta, and next to me I had this gentleman sitting, and we got chatting as normal. And in the 2-hour flight, that flight went very, very fast. He turned out to be the CMD of a company called BCCL, Bharat Cooking Coal Limited. And he had just taken over as the chairman of that company. And he was very, very upset. He was frustrated in terms of the fact that he has taken over this company. And this company had been making losses since the time it had been nationalized, which was the early 70s. And he wanted to do something about it. He was not happy with the fact that he was CMD of a loss-making company. And so I said, okay, we can help you to see what we can do about it. So his problem was that while he was mining the coal, he was selling some portion of that coal to people or to organizations who were not consuming that coal, but were actually middlemen. So they would take that delivery order at say 600 rupees per ton, and even before that delivery order left his office building, that had already been traded at 16 to 1700 rupees a ton. So here, all the hard work being done by the miner, he's getting 600 rupees per ton, and this middleman, or middlemen so to say, are picking up 1000 rupees per ton just trading this piece of paper. So he was extremely frustrated. He said, can you do something about it? And we did something about it. We did something about it so much so that over 500 million tons of coal, I beg your pardon, has been sold through a methodology designed by us. Because we went in and we understood what is it that is paying the seller, which is the miner, what is it that the buyer wants, who are the buyers, who are the middlemen, how to disintermediate the middlemen. through an efficient and transparent process. And through this methodology, Coal India, because then it started with BCCL and went to all the other subsidiaries, over 500 million tons was sold, has been sold so far. And the incremental revenue that they've got has been over 30,000 crores. Large numbers. Now this 30,000 crores in the normal course would have gone to the middlemen or the coal mafia. So you can imagine they were not very happy when we started doing this. So the threats that we received from them was something that my colleagues and I had to go through. The cases that they filed in all the high courts across the country, which were then pulled up at the Supreme Court and dismissed over there, were interesting times that we have gone through. So we believe, as your director mentioned in one of the earlier themes that you had, which is socio-economic changes, we believe that we have contributed in some small way to bring about a better socio-economic structure to our country, bringing about improvements in some of these basic commodities, the way that they're bought and sold. We are looking at other commodities. We have got into a horizontal, which is called bi-junction, where we cut across industries and sectors. So bi-junction has clients not only from steel and coal, but from FMCG, from chemical, from energy. And we are bringing about transparency and efficiency there in a B2B context, not only to the private sector, but to the public sector. And more recently, even to the state government. So we've signed a contract recently with the government of Chhattisgarh for the next 5 years to improve their procurement practices, so that the little supplier is able to supply directly to large companies, large corporates, large government agencies without going through the normal pain that we all are associated with in terms of making supplies, getting payments on time. So this is something that we do and which gives us a great deal of happiness. All my colleagues, there are over 700 of us now. Mahol is one of my colleagues who's come here with me. But there are over 700 of us. We are extremely happy. It's not a problem for us to get into office on Monday morning. So because of what we believe in, and we believe that we are making a change, we are making a positive change to this country and to the customers and the industry that we serve. Mention was also made that we do something else which is called e-junction. So this is something that we started many years ago, possibly because of the fact that some of us came from that Tata ethos. Very early in the life of M-junction or metal junction, in those days, we said, what more can we do to give back to community? So one was, of course, we felt we were doing a great deal as far as the buyers and sellers and all the other constituents of the steel supply chain and the coal supply chain and various other supply chains. But over and above that, what can we do for the communities who are not so privileged as we are? So from very early on, maybe the early 2002, 2003, we were thinking in terms of what to do, and we started doing something. So one of the first things that we did was, we said, let's go out to the villages outside Calcutta and take doctors. Tata Steel has doctors in this data center, 4 doctors. So put them into a couple of sumos, put some prescriptive medicines in there, took them out and spent the weekend in these villages meeting with people who actually needed medical care, health care, or whatever. And we did this for many weekends, and this gave us happiness. But then really we felt that, look, what is it that we as a company M-junction is doing to facilitate this other than organizing it and possibly providing some cash towards it. So this is not something which is sustainable. Till such time as we came up with this idea, which was that computer education is something which is required by everybody. Without computers, it's impossible for anyone to so to say, exist even in a B2C environment, forget about a B2B environment. And of course, there are colleges and schools who teach you about the computer, but then obviously you need to have some amount of money to pay for it. So is there a group or a segment of people in our society who are unable to pay for this education but are interested to learn about this? And that's where e-junction started, and we are happy that over the past few years, 8,000 people have been trained. We run a 4-month program which is run by our people ourselves. So this is volunteers from my organization who volunteer to give up their weekends to stay back after office hours. We provide the infrastructure. Some of our customers provide the infrastructure. And they stay back and they teach these people. And it's wonderful in terms of the change which is brought about among the trainees and how they are actually benefiting from this education or this training that we give to them. And of course, the companies that we have tied up with, largely retail companies, hospitality companies, BPO companies, who actually provide employment to them, and I'm very happy to provide employment to them because these guys have been trained by us to do this. So e-junction is something that we do over and above what we run, which is M-junction. And we have something called MET, which is the Movement for Efficiency and Transparency. So this was started about 4 years ago when there was a great deal of despondency in this country, where the media, the newspapers, you would wake up in the morning and everything was bad, right? There was corruption, there was, all sorts of horrible things which were being reported, and we felt that, there's some good stuff which is happening out there, and it doesn't find mention by the media. And should we not provide a platform to those who actually are doing the great stuff but don't get reported? Is there some way that we can reach out and find out who these so-so gems are? And we sent some people to work and we found a lot of gems. And these gems were doing some fantastic work in all sorts of fields. Some in academia, some in social activists, some in industry. And nobody had heard about them, which was very, very sad. One, in terms of the fact that they were unrecognized, unheralded. The second is people had not heard about them and hence were not encouraged to actually do something that they were doing or to join them in that. So we started a platform, which is a physical platform such like this, where we brought these speakers together and we brought an audience together. All something which was sponsored by us and by others such like us. And the delegates came from schools, from colleges, from industry, from all sorts of backgrounds. And we put this up on the social media itself, looking at TED Talks as a kind of way to actually broadcast this. And we have so far covered about 80 speakers who have come to these various forums and talked about what they've done. And it's been wonderfully motivating and encouraging and to hear what they have to say and what challenges that they have had to encounter, but how they persevered and gone on because they have actually believed in it and they're passionate about it. So I will stop here now and I will look forward in case there are any questions that you have, I will be happy to answer. It always has to be the first icebreaker, right? You will be there. Okay, it has to be an M&I, the first batch. Is there a mic or something?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your presentation. I work in the health industry space, and one of the discussion points that's happening in society today is about using e-commerce for enhancing the delivery of drugs to populations across the country. So in a way, it's very similar to what you faced in coal, where the incumbents are stoutly opposing the move to. So we just wanted to understand, as e-commerce, CI National Committee Chairman of e-commerce, what your thoughts are about how the space is evolving and what the current thinking is.
Thank you. So e-commerce, as is mentioned, is something which can apply to anything and everything. And health is, of course, something that can sort of benefit tremendously using the advantages of not only the internet but the other digital technologies which are available today. Unfortunately, there will always be people who will wish it to fail, who are already firmly entrenched in that supply chain or in the distribution network and have been so for many years and will refuse to let this actually proceed. But this is the time that people like you and this is I'm reaching out to this PGPX group. You need to come out and make sure that this changes, because the technology is there to make the change happen, which is one, and it is evolved considerably. So technology is not an issue. The need is firmly established, which is what has been described just now. Most definitely, a very, very strong need is there. So you need to bring the two together, which is in terms of where the technology enablement to solve the problem, and the problem is there. Yes, of course, there will be resistance to this from the incumbents or the people who are sitting there, much like I mentioned the coal mafia, much like I mentioned, or did not mention the steel mafia, who were opposed to this. And the interesting part in this is that, for me to take the example, as far as steel is concerned, the opposition did not come as much, or as we thought it would, from the buying community. It came largely from the selling organizations. So I'm talking about Tata Steel, I'm talking about executives from these large companies who were willing it to fail, because then they would have been out of jobs. It was they themselves who were protecting their own turf, who said that, look, this is not going to work. Where hasn't it worked before? Questioning this rather than supporting this. So really the issue was more from the larger organizations who were firmly entrenched in this rather than from the small trader or the small fabricator who was understood the value of this very quickly and made investments in buying that computer. I'm talking about early 2000s. So he had to buy the computer, he had to buy an internet dial-up connection. He did not know how to use it, so he got hold of his niece or his nephew to come and say, sit down here and listen to what I have to say and put in these bits from here. But they saw that value very quickly and they wanted to make the change. So the point that I'm making is that the consumer of that healthcare, the little guy out there who actually needs it, is going to be your bastion of support, and that's what you need to do, which is to get hold of them. On the other side, you will have this kind of resistance from the larger players, but even among the largest players, what we found always was that there was this one champion. You need to identify that champion. We had the same problem, for example, in Steel Authority, where we were not able to make any dent whatsoever. It was difficult, we didn't even know where to go. In Tata Steel it was a little easier because I came from Tata Steel to go back there and to convince them because of the credibility I had, what clout I had, it was easier. But Steel Authority, we floundered. Till such time as we came across one champion, and I mentioned him, that was Dr. Sanat Mishra, he was the MD of Rourkela Steel Plant, and he said, I'll give you a chance. And that is all we needed. He said, I'll give you a chance. He gave us a little toehold here. He gave us a little toehold, we went in there and we made a success of that first e-selling event. We made case studies of that and we then went all out to say that, look, if it's working here, why can't it work other places? We then got hold of Dr. Sanat Mishra to become our ambassador, to go out and evangelize the opportunity of actually creating value. And once that happened, nobody can stop it. Let me also give you the story as far as coal is concerned. When we started working, we were lucky that there was no minister in charge of coal. The minister was in jail. His name was Shibu Soren. And that's how we got started, because there was a secretary, there was no minister. But he came back 6 months later and he wanted to stop what we had started, Shibu Soren. But by that time, we had become too firmly established. We were able to present that you cannot stop this because this is how Coal India is benefiting, this is how the small buyers of coal are benefiting. And he was not able to stop it. It became too late for Shibu Soren to stop it. So my point is, you guys need to make this change happen. You who are sitting in this room, there are a hell of a lot of opportunities, including the health opportunity, which is being talked about. And there is great transformation that you can do. Do not focus only in terms of e-commerce is equal to selling mobile phones and books online. I think that is a very, very small part of this entire e-commerce story. The larger stories are things like health, as has been mentioned, as well as anything and everything in a B2B or even a B2C fashion.
Okay.
My question is regarding the funding of the e-commerce sector. So at the start of the year, when you look at it, right, and you open the Economic Times, you'll hear the news about the e-commerce companies getting funded, right? And the profitability is nowhere near the horizon. And if you look nowadays, it's about, they are taking debt to fund the company. So how long do you think that the cycle of funding can go on without the profitability? And what's your views on this? Is this question clear?
Yes, very clear.
Thank you.
I'm not so clear, but the answer for the question is very clear. We as the consumers of such e-commerce companies or e-retail companies, I call them e-retail companies, we as consumers are having a great time. And I hope this continues for some period of time. I understand that 12,500 crores worth of subsidies were given by these companies to consumers like you and me buying online, which is great, right? We get a subsidy to go and buy a mobile phone or a book or whatever we are buying online. There's somebody who's paying for it, we are not paying for it. And this number is going to grow to 25,000 crores in the next year. That means a further 12,500 crores is going to be pumped in. 25,000 crores of subsidies are going to be given here for us to buy consumer products online. But the point is, how long is this going to last? I agree with you here. I mean, there is this madness has to stop. This money which is being poured into to subsidize our procurement has to stop. It doesn't make sense. But when will it stop? Maybe 2 or 3 years, when the appetite of these wonderfully American and maybe now even Chinese companies moving in and deciding that look, this is doesn't make sense. But what I see happening, quite frankly, is that there will be a few people who will survive. Now, who are those few people? I have no idea. Whether it will be the existing guys, which are largely third-party guys, or will it be in terms of the people who are yet to come in? And you hear about, for example, the Future Group, Kishore Biyani, you hear about the Tatas, they have something called Tata Unistore. You hear about the Birlas, you hear about a lot of these guys who are also coming in. What is their play? Spencers are now getting into it from Calcutta. Everybody's getting into it. But unless there is true value creation, unless there is some benefit which is on a sustainable basis that you are able to give to all your stakeholders, and your stakeholders include not only your customers but also your shareholders, they're not going to agree to go ahead with this. So I believe, as far as your question is concerned, this madness will stop. When it will stop, I have no idea. There will be a few winners and most of them will be losers. But it's good that public money is not going to be spent on this madness. It is private money, it is high net worth individuals' money, it is whatever bank's money, so we don't care. So it doesn't affect us. I mean, that's my way of looking at this. And these early sort of path breakers, it's good that, that they're breaking the path. And the people who come out from these ashes will be stronger because of what these guys have been able to do. So my hats off to them as well. But let me also, make mention that, when the dot-com bust happened, and I mentioned Kalyani Steel exited without paying us any of our paid capital. Tata Steel and SAIL had given us both 4 crores each. They expected us to pay us back the money and to close shop. We did not do that. They were too polite, or maybe a little scared to ask us for the money also. But they made it very clear that they're not going to give us any more money. So our business plan, which PwC had made, required us to have 20 crores of capital. So but out of that only 8 crores has been paid, and we were given a very clear message, aur paisa nahi milega. Make do with what you have. And that's what we made do with. So very early in our life, and I existed, we have been profitable. We have been so profitable that we have been paying dividends, which is not such a good story. So here's a complete contrast. M Junction has been profitable from day one, is a dividend paying company, has paid dividends in hundreds of crores to its shareholders. On the other side, you have these crazy, so to say crazy sort of things happening. Where does this happen? And I'm sure there will be a middle path which will come about.
My question is regarding MAT. I see a lot of similarity between MAT and bottom of pyramid. Like for bottom of pyramid, what CK Pralad mentioned, there's a lot of market lies at bottom of pyramid, and we have to use their synergies to greater good. So what kind of contribution that you think we as an MBA student provide once we pass out, probably we get into profession, so apart from our as part of our professional.
Excellent. But let me just sort of correct your impression as far as MET is concerned. MET that we do is a totally philanthropic exercise. It's got nothing to do with M Junction getting more business. It's got nothing to do with operating at the bottom of the pyramid. So some of these people, speakers that we've invited over the years, these 80 guys, some of them have operated at the bottom of the pyramid, some at the middle of the pyramid, some have maybe obviously not at the top of the pyramid, but maybe at various shades at the bottom and the middle. So, but they have brought about transformation in every sphere. So one guy, for example, I mentioned about him, Chandrakant Singh. Chandrakant Singh comes from a small village in Bihar, and where there was no electricity. In the days, he's now about 35, 36 years old. And there was no electricity when he was growing up, but his father was a headmaster meaning a small school. And he studied hard, and he studied so hard that he then went and did his masters from IIT Hawaii. And he then got a job, and he is in Bangalore. And he, at that point of time, decided that he wants to give back. And give back to this little village of his, which even today doesn't have electricity. Even today doesn't have electricity, so he set up a school there. And I've seen this school. It's not a small school, it is not a pathshala, it is top of the art, state-of-the-art kind of a school, where he is using solar energy to provide energy, he is using the internet, he is using Skype, he is getting tutors and teachers from South Africa and the United States to teach his students. The way that they are dressed and the food that they eat, the hygiene and the nutrition that they get is exemplary. And he's created this wonderful story in this little village of Bihar. And we all know what Bihar, we read about what is happening in Bihar. It's not a very safe place or very interesting place to live, but he's created this. If we just have a few more Chandrakant, we can imagine the change which will happen here. And he's done this without any governmental help here. Government came to him after they saw what they were doing and they wanted whatever they want, what they call hafta, whatever they music. And he was able to throw them out and keep them out of this entire story. So, if you are to ask me what you guys need to be doing, I would urge you that these are things which are transformational, which will give you a great deal of satisfaction and happiness, bringing about such change, rather than some of the more interesting and exotic stuff that is possible that you can do, which is enjoying maybe very large companies looking after the top end of the pyramid or whatever it is. That also some of you may want to do it there. But there is an opportunity for you to do something on the bottom of the pyramid. It gives me a great deal of happiness and pleasure. And it may do the same for you. So if you believe in that, please do that.
In the interest of time, we'll just take one more question. Yeah.
Hello, sir. I have a question regarding the ease of doing business part. You probably have dealt more with the government in terms of coal and most tariffs. So what's your take on that? I mean, we keep on hearing that in India, ease of doing business is kind of is worst. So what's your take? I mean, when you are dealing in such kind of sectors, what have you experienced and has it improved over the years?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And this quite engages with us both in N junction as well as in CII. So we are not the worst. What I understand on a scale of 1 to 180, which had been prepared by World Bank, we are 142. We are sandwiched between Uzbekistan and the Gaza Strip, which is not a very happy place to be, but that's where we are. And our Prime Minister said and recognized that we need to do something about it, we need to come down to less than 50. So that's the target that he set, and we are all trying to work towards it. So I look at it in terms of an opportunity rather than anything else. That we are so bad, right? And yet our GDP growth rate is between 7 and 7.5%. Can you imagine if we can improve the ease of doing business in this country, where we can be here? So the potential of where we can be is humongous, which is one. The second thing is the opportunity of doing something. So this is a bad story, but it is for us to make this change happen here. And I agree with you in the industry that we are in, which is steel, coal, and we are now getting into certain others, including tea. The role of government is very, very strong. And you got to work with the government to make it happen. Unlike in the B2C environment. In the B2C environment, these snappies and all, they don't need government because the government does not have any role to play other than being a regulator or a tax collector. It has no other role to play. But if you look at these industries that are talked about, they have a ministry which is in charge of this. There's a ministry of coal, there's a ministry of steel, there is a tea board chairman, there's a ministry of, ministry of commerce which handles all this. And these guys don't want you to come in and make changes in. So it is difficult. But we need to make sure that we continue banging on this, so to say, governmental door. And even in the government, we have found that there are some champions. And we got to identify these champions and work with these champions and see, and there's a different way of getting proposals to the government. But we should not give up and we should work with them because it's, as far as the B2B story is concerned, we have no choice but to work with them to make these things succeed. So it's going to be an uphill task, but I really look at it as an opportunity. So if we were number one on ease of doing business, which is where Singapore is, for example, I think the impact of e-commerce is limited only because they are already a very efficient and transparent country. And hence, if you want to do e-commerce in Singapore, forget it, don't do it, do something else. But if you are in India or in Gaza Strip or in Uzbekistan, then there's a great opportunity for e-commerce to actually flourish and bring about improvements in the way that we actually do business. Well, thank you very much, and it's been wonderful interacting with you.